Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing up here, I've managed to get a bracket that I had knocking around so I can film from above. Hello, I'm Edward Thompson. Welcome to today's episode of Pictures on My Mind. And in today's episode, you know what? I'm going to do something I haven't done yet in like 30 episodes. I'm going to talk about one of my books. And the book I'm going to talk about today is When in the Lone Star State. And the thing I'm going to talk about is some of my favourite portraits from this book. This work was published this year. At the start of 2023, but I actually photographed all of the work between 2006 and 2007. It took me a little while to get the book published, but I did it. I did it this year thanks to people helping me crowdfund, and actually shared the process of crowdfunding this book on an earlier video, which I've had a lot of great feedback for. It's helped a lot of people, so yes, consider self-publishing. But here we go, dive right in. This is When in the Lone Star State. Hopefully there's no freaky deaky reflections happening. I hope it's okay. Let's start. Where should we start? Let's just see what randomly pops up. This is a good one. This photograph was made in 2006. There was a guy just hanging around, walking about Kerrville High Street, and I only took literally 2 photos of him. This one and another one, and this was the shot. And a lot of the time, I mean, I call this kind of genre like documentary portraiture, and it's essentially kind of how I made the jump from, say, street photography to documentary photography. Because what I was doing was, you know, rather than hanging back and being like the ghost who walks and just sort of godlike picking out random moments and not messing with anyone's day, I'm a pretty chatty person. I just started chatting to people, and I got chatting to Jerry. So we took this cool photo. I remember him saying that was a big cup of coffee. He liked lots of coffee. The reason I liked this shot was the lines. I liked the way we had the line of the cigarette, the line of the antenna, and the line of the Kerrville Realty sign. I like the orange of the cap, the orange here, and there's a few elements going together which made it interesting. But I just like meeting Jerry. I like the fact that, you know, I'd never meet Jerry ever again. We had this little chance encounter, and he was kind enough to say, hey, when I was like, can I take your photo? He was like, yeah, cool. And then this gets a bit weird. It took like 16 years for this photo kind of to be seen. And it was an article run by Huck Magazine when I was trying to crowdfund the photo book earlier this year. And then when it was finished, I had someone reach out to me, and it turns out it was Jerry's son. And I spoke to his son about his dad, and his dad was a Vietnam War veteran and had struggled a lot with life kind of after that. Just, you know, an amazing, interesting person, an amazing life. And he died earlier that year. And when his family saw the photograph completely randomly online, it was on Jerry's sister's birthday. And the family said it was like he was reaching out to them through the photo. And I just find that incredibly, like, wonderful. I find that really kind of touching, and I find that really magical. So this is for me why photography is really cool. And I know a lot of people, right, they'll try and cut you down. They'll look at your photographs and say, oh yeah, cool story, bro, but it's not in the picture. And it's like, well, yeah, but in some way that story is in the picture. In some wacky way it's there. And I think I saw it, and I think his family saw it. So again, you know, this is one of the lovely things of just encountering strangers, and it's something I've done, well, for a long time now, for like over 20 years. Right, who's next? Okay, cool. So this is in a tiny town of Utopia. It's a bit far out from where I was staying in Texas on a ranch, but I drove there for a number of hours, and I got there, and I was walking around the high street again, and I saw a couple outside a thrift shop. Now, I freaking love charity shops in the UK. They're called thrift shops in America, so any chance to get in a thrift shop, bang, I would get in there. And outside were Ada and Sonny. It was their t-shirts. Like, she was literally wearing the Utopia t-shirt, and Sonny actually had this chopped up snake join or die t-shirt, which I know alludes to something else in like American history. I'm not sure, I've forgotten exactly what. I knew 16 years ago. A lot has happened since. Tell me in the comments what that shirt means. I only took 2 photos, and I think in one of them they blinked, and then this was the shot that I used. So again, when I'm doing this kind of documentary portraiture on the street, I'm not taking many photos. Sometimes I'm just taking one shot. Yeah, it's really nice. And again, you know, nice lines here. The exposure was sort of, obviously, you've got to be very careful with your exposure. If you see how it's blown out outside, if I'd messed it up in here, then you would have, you know, it would have been really dark. So again, I was using just a little sort of light meter, just getting a reading off their faces, just so that was the correct exposure. So this is a cool one. I walked into a gun show in Texas, and on the way in I saw this truck. And of course, I'm going to take a photo of it, right? It's like homemade signs, Rome was destroyed by liberals, illegal aliens and terrorists, no amnesty for illegals. It's all pretty heavy stuff, guys. Remember, this is 2006. This is way kind of pre-Trump, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I photographed this truck and then I went into the gun and knife show. And then I saw this chap and I was like, you know, got chatting and I wanted to take a portrait of him. And it turns out he was buying the rifle he last used in Vietnam. Now, two weird things actually. First weird thing, so I'm framing up the shot and I realise I can't believe my luck. And I'm kind of aware, I'm aware of it taking the composition. This isn't like a happy accident. Like I knew what I was doing in this portrait. So obviously he's a big dude, big beard, big white beard, big belly. In the background, you've kind of got these people dressed in red, and at the top, you've got Christmas lights. Now, bearing in mind this was the middle of the summer, but for me, it's like Bad Santa. I couldn't believe it. It's like, oh man, it just all kind of converged into this weird, wacky, kind of alternative kind of Santa. Again, you might look at that and be like, Ed, what are you talking about, Bad Santa? You might decode that photograph just looking at what's in it and get it too. But yeah, like I said previously, you'll see a lot of things in your photographs other people won't see, but some of them might see them. And that's kind of my rogue. That's what I'm doing. Now, the other thing that happened that was strange, I got chatting to him about a truck in the parking lot. And you know what? It was his truck. So out of all the people I could have photographed in the gun and knife show, and I didn't do any other portraits, it was him. And it's funny how whatever drew me to his truck drew me to him. And this happened recently on another little photo quest. That's right, about a month ago I was with my brother-in-law Miles and we were out photographing on this Arthurian quest down to Glastonbury and Tintagel, and I happened to photograph like one house in Glastonbury and I happened to photograph one portrait in Tintagel in Cornwall, and it happened to be the guy's house that I'd photographed. Isn't that weird? So yeah, who knows what that means, but I kind of like it. Right, okay. So this guy is Danny Jerry, and for this one there's a caption, so I might read this out, okay? This portrait was made in a tiny hamlet called Luckenbach, Texas. Its population wasn't even in double digits, but it had a bar, and behind that bar I met a musician called Danny Jerry. The photograph was taken during my final trip to Texas in 2007. My father had just died. Danny started playing a song called No Time to Cry, a song about someone losing their father. The song spans many years, always ending each verse with the lyric, because I'm older now and I've got no time to cry. So yeah, I found that a pretty powerful moment for me. I found the kind of light beautiful. It was kind of sunset light, kind of going low in the sky, glancing across his face, the guitar. You know, it had a lot of, it felt really special, that place. There's not many places I've been to in America where you really feel like a sense of history, because obviously, you know, supposedly it's so new in a way, which it's not. The land's kind of ancient. And I think there was something going on in Luckenbach. It had a little bit of magic there. So yeah, it felt really cool to photograph Danny there as well. 2006, 16 years ago. So also, by the way, you know, if you're looking at these photos and you're like, yeah, I'll do better, Ed. I'll do way better than that. You're rubbish. Man, I was like a student when I was taking this work, okay? All right? So it's pretty good. Right. This shot has been doing the rounds. People have always liked this shot. I went to Whataburger. I know, don't judge me, but there are a lot of cool burger places we don't get in the UK. There was Sonic Burger, where you could do like cherry shakes, you could choose the juice. There was Whataburger, all these guys. So anyway, I was in a Whataburger and there was this lady, Opie, just having her lunch, and I just took a photo. I didn't ask permission at this point. I just took a snap, and then I went and spoke to her afterwards and we had a chat. But it's a beautiful shot. It's got lovely light. It's this nice kind of natural moment. It's an American diner. It just has that, you know, burger place. It has that kind of mystique. But yeah, lovely shot, very popular shot. And funny enough, when I was crowdfunding the video, I think I tagged Whataburger in it, and they were like, can we share it? And I was like, hell yeah, you can share it. And I can't remember how many hundreds of thousands of followers they had, but they had quite a few, and they shared this photo. I don't know if that led to any more book sales, crowdfunding, but whatever, you know, you got to try stuff, you know, you got to try stuff out. So that was really cool too. This was a lucky shot. Again, I popped out to a thrift store. I know, right? You're seeing a theme here. And I took my medium format camera with me, but I forgot to take my light meter. And I saw these two women walking around doing their shopping. And I was like, I've got to get a portrait. So I asked them for a portrait. We stood by the front, where the window was at the front of the thrift store, and I just guessed it. And I'll never forget, I guessed I think it was a 60th. I think I did a 60th on f4 or something like that. It might have been a 60th at 2.8 because there wasn't much light. And bang, it's great. 2 shots I took, and that was the killer. And again, it's a very popular shot. It's really cool if you look at their styling, the way they're dressed, their body language, her looking away to camera, her looking to camera. Yeah, really fun. And I called it Friends at the Thrift Store. And again, 2006, 16 years ago. Aren't we lucky as photographers that our photographs don't go out of date? I mean, they do in a way, but it's not like eating a cake and you're like, ugh, 16-year-old cake. These are still good. And I think for me personally as a documentary photographer, it's not like I've tapped into some kind of fad, some kind of trendy way of photographing. For me, like, documentary is a bit like jazz, you know? It's like a certain style that's always kind of cool. And obviously with this passing of time, these little photographs become portals into history. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, there we go. And the last photograph that I'm going to talk about, actually no, I'm going to talk about this guy. I hope the reflection's okay. Is the reflection okay? Is it working? So yeah, so I was hanging out with this guy Larry in his trailer park home. He was blind, he'd lost an arm in like a factory accident, and everyone with this shot always thought he had his hand in his pocket, but no, obviously he's missing his hand, and loved the way his dog was kind of looking out of the window of the caravan home. And then we just stayed and hung out. We drank a fair bit of booze, and he started doing some drumming, taping, he called it himself, he'd tape his drumstick to his nub and he'd drum, and he started rapping and drumming at the same time. Now, you've got this sort of mental image of this guy, right? This is when it just blew me away. I mentioned randomly that my dad had worked on the Channel Tunnel, and he got so excited. He knew all about it. All about the Channel Tunnel. Everything, the tunnel connecting England to France, right? He was like an expert on it. It blew me away. And it's like that weird thing where you can have a preconceived notion of someone that you meet and be like, oh yeah, this person's this way, what, no. And he's like an expert on the Channel Tunnel in the middle of Texas in a trailer park home. And yeah, that was just this wonderful moment. So I think being a documentary photographer, you can learn a lot of stuff about people, but also about yourself and how you might be judging people. And when you start actually having conversations, it starts to kind of shift the landscape of your mind. So suddenly your mind's a bit broader, and you're sort of more willing to accept that, you know, someone can surprise you, you know. Right, and the last photograph I'll talk about is this lovely portrait I love of Walker. What's happening here is that's actually a giant mural of the Texas flag painted on his patio, reflected in his glasses. And yeah, he stood still, but as I was chatting to him, I just said, oh, just hold that, and I pulled my camera up. So it wasn't set up, it just kind of just happened organically. And I've written a bit about that here, so let me read this to you. Walker, 2007. Walker was a friend of my family's. He'd been a tugboat captain all his life and was retired when I took this portrait at his house, a Texan flag painted in the patio reflected in his sunglasses. He had a wicked sense of humour and would joke that he and my dad were in the Horse's Arse Club. I remember the day I took this photograph vividly. I met up with Walker and his wife Linda and we drank margaritas. It was 2007, my dad had just died of cancer. I ended up getting drunk and got upset about losing my dad and cried. Walker and his wife lost their daughter when she was a teenager. In hindsight, I shouldn't have got so upset in their company. Walker passed away last year. I hope he's with his daughter. And if any of you have lost anyone, ever, and you have a photograph of them, that is the most precious thing, isn't it? And I think it's something that a lot of photographers just don't think about because we take so many photos. But I've had a few things recently where a friend lost both his parents and I just stepped in during their wedding. The wedding photographers knocked off their scooter. I happened to have my camera gear and I photographed their wedding. This is years ago as well. And when he lost both of his parents recently, there's this lovely photograph of him and his mum and dad at the wedding. And again, like, I'm so glad I took that photo. So, you know, portraits, they can be really important things and very personal things to people. So yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed that little foray into my world of When in the Lone Star State. The book is still available. I'm selling it for £40 a copy, hardback, limited edition, 500 copies. Yeah, and if you want to make a book a bit like this, again, I'll link to it, but there's a guide for how to crowdfund the book itself, but also I did 22 videos of how you yourself can also self-publish your own zine or photo book. I hope you've enjoyed that, and my cool little bracket, and I'll see you next week. I don't know why I'm waving, there's no one here.